but now we'd love to hear from you.
Yes, sir.
Two questions. So first of all, how did you meet the family? How did this come about? And second of all, to this day, has Bob Bechtel ever, now that he obviously knows about Soldier's brother, has he ever reached out to him, ever apologized for any sort of condolence or anything like that?
I'll answer the first, and then I'll let you answer the second. Okay. I was teaching a class on how to make documentaries about religion or social justice at Union Theological Seminary in New York, and Kara was a student there. And Kara was interested at the time in becoming a prison chaplain because of her compassion for folks in prison, because of learning about her father and what had happened since then. And she said, this was before any of this had happened, my family wants to raise awareness around the issues of school violence and bullying, and nobody knows this, but let me tell you a story. And it rocked my world, and she said, would you like to follow us as we go through this process? And I said, yes. And then in terms of the second question.
John Strozier and my father have contacted each other. We've exchanged emails. But to this day, as far as I know, there has not been a formal apology.
Have there been any repercussions since coming out? You touched upon briefly in the film that people were much more supportive than you expected, but is he still employed? Is he become an outcast in other areas of the community?
In some ways, I would say unbelievably, he's been supported 100%. He hasn't lost his job, his friends and his family, the community and strangers have all written to him and been incredibly supportive.
I will say one thing. What's weird about my job is that I see a community rally around the man they know or think they know, and you film that, and then when the family walks out the door, you film sometimes a different kind of conversation. And so it's been really odd to see some breaking, even as you see loyalty. And I also think that we all wonder what will happen next.
In the back corner there.
Just a comment and question. So I want to commend you because I think it's quite a complicated story, and you tell it with a lot of sensitivity to the emotions involved. And I'm just wondering, when you first heard the story and you were sort of in the planning stage of the documentary, did you have sort of rules for yourself how you were going to tell it so that it didn't become like basically like a warning pitch, just something like a tablet? Like there's so many things about it that could be, sensational. And I'm just wondering, was there a process there where you set up how you could tell?
Well, that wouldn't have really been my style. And so I think that in taking on the story, what was most compelling to me was the peeling back of the image of an American family. I think when I think about my own family and the secrets we live with, and when I think about most families I know, I am sort of possessed by trying to get under that skin. And so is Wojciech, but in a very different style. And so I think perhaps so are we all, or so many of us. In terms of rules, I certainly had issues of commitment and responsibility and loyalty to the families on the two sides of the story who shockingly opened up to this experience and process. And that was certainly chastening when I wanted to get a little racier in my own conscience. But I think so that's my answer. I have immense respect for both sides of the story, and that's really difficult. And talking to each side regularly about what this film is going to be and what I think of the other side was very challenging.
don't like it.
The question?
How do the daughters feel about the fact that their father has never apologized?
I don't like it. And I don't know what key would unlock that door, because there is a block there that's extraordinary, and I have talked to him 10 different ways to try and understand it, so I can't explain.
I work on him from time to time about it, pushing him lovingly. But again, I have to remember that that's what I want. And ultimately, we live our lives individually, so he's going to have to come to that conclusion. And what do I want it for? So if I want an apology, I have to search within myself what that need is, because that's not about him. So
The person said he seems like such an intelligent man, you think that's the first thing he would have done.
Yeah, we're getting some.
Knowing this, and you ladies are incredibly courageous, is the film really finished without some kind of prologue about your dad's attitude right now, without how is the film complete?
Is the film complete? Is there a need for some kind of postscript or something following in relation to Bob's attitude now?
I would say that his, we've had some pretty heavy confrontations within the family to try and access his emotions and feelings of remorse. I know he feels that he pays penance every day, because I can see it in his face and I can see it in his actions. You know, like kids in college that couldn't go home for Thanksgiving. You know, does so-and-so have somewhere to go? And, you know, when he says that, he kind of, you know, leans in and his voice softens, and, you know, he hugs everyone as they come in, male, female, whatever age. It's just the way he is. So it's really, he's completely different people at the same time.
What I think is interesting about the question is how uncomfortable it feels for some sense of completion or end that satisfies us to not be in a movie like this. And that, again, resonates with me as a son who wants his parents to be radically different than they are, though I love them. And try as I may, you know, they stay the same. And that's what you live with. And what's compelling about the story to some degree too is that they have some sense of journey and process in the face of something that doesn't really change. I mean, he may get fired, he may not get fired, but there's one thing about Bob, in my experience in this film, and it's that he's not budging. And he still isn't, and it will be interesting.
One thing I had to learn that was very difficult to come to grips with was that it doesn't ever end. And I thought at some point my pain would end, or I thought at some point I would get an answer, or I'd be able to crystallize it in some way so I could have a perfect little plot line to put it into, and then close the book, and then move on with my life. And that never happens, and it never will happen. And it's just about managing it. You know, this is not the time to have a breakdown, I'll have it later. Or this is not the time to have that conversation, I'll have it later. Or setting goals for yourself. You know, going to the graveyard was a really big goal of mine, but I had to be ready, and I was pushed a little bit. But that changed my life, going to the graveyard. And then there's next steps that I have personally to accomplish, to make sense. But I'm not going to make total sense. And you never will. And part of that's the joy of having a mystery in your life. I mean, that's life. And you can't ever fool yourself into thinking it's going to have this little nice, the end, at any point. So.
Well,